We know that dental insurance companies are doing everything they can to make it more difficult for dentists to be profitable.
The insurance companies are not going to reach out to you and say, it's been a while, we owe you more money. That is not going to happen. You need to understand what the relationship between your master fees and the PPO fees you're accepting in your practice and what that really is doing to your practice. You don't want to ask for a fee increase on codes that are irrelevant to your practice. You want to ask for a fee increase on codes that are driving the production in your practice. You should be actively searching for fee increases. This is a game. It was built by design.
Are you a dentist who's striving to build a more thriving, profitable practice without feeling overwhelmed by the numbers? Hey, good news, there is a better way. The Academy of Dental CPA member firms know dentistry. In fact, it's all they do. Our members are experienced CPA firms who specialize exclusively in serving dentists across every stage of ownership. From startups to acquisitions, to optimizing associate income, to advanced tax strategy, practice growth, and transitions, we're here to support your financial success. When you work with an ADCPA member, you get more than a tax preparer. You get a strategic partner, someone who understands dental industry benchmarks, overhead management, collections, dental insurance, compensation models, and all the unique business challenges you face every single day. We bring clarity to the business side of dentistry. While you focus on clinical excellence, we ensure your financial foundation remains strong with advisory that turns data into confident decisions. Join over 11,000 dentists nationwide who have a financial expert in their corner. Visit adcpa.org to find a trusted dental CPA near you. That's adcpa.org, because your numbers should work as hard as you do. Dentists, here's a quick question for you. When did you sign your PPO contracts? 5 years ago? 10 years ago? And has anyone ever gone back and asked for better rates? For most practices, the answer is never, which means you're still getting paid old rates for today's work. The insurance companies love that. Well, PPO Advisors doesn't. They go to the insurance companies and negotiate better rates for you. Their clients see a 20% fee increase on average. Same patients, same work, more money. They've done this for over 2,800 practices, adding $37.3 million in revenue. It starts with a risk-free PPO profit analysis. They check every fee schedule and show you the money you're leaving on the table with no pressure to go further. Visit PPOadvisors.com today. That's PPOadvisors.com.
And hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Art of Dental Finance and Management podcast with Art Wiederman, CPA. I'm your host, Art Wiederman. Welcome to the podcast. And I've got a really special episode for you today. One of my passions, as having been a dental CPA for over 40 years, is to help my clients grow their top and bottom lines. Well, we're going to work on the top line today. There are no real firm statistics out on what the average discount is when you go in network with a PPO plan. I've seen things 20 to 30%, but I've heard more along the lines of closer to 40%. So if your crown fee is $1,500, you are probably averaging around $900 to maybe $1,000 that you're going to receive for a crown. And, my life is a math problem, folks. And, when you're dealing with a discount of 40% and you're dealing with a profit margin of 33 to 38%, the numbers just don't work. My guest today, Shelley DeGroff from PPO Advisors, is the national expert, as far as I'm concerned, on helping doctors manage their PPO relationships, credentialing, increasing their reimbursements. So we're going to come to Shelley in a moment. We got some great conversation in preparing for this podcast. And I thought, I know a lot of stuff, but I am learning every single day. I learned a whole bunch of stuff in preparing for this podcast that we're going to talk about. We're going to give you guys some great information. I do want to thank my wonderful sponsors, the Academy of Dental CPAs, 25 CPA firms across the country that represent over 12,000 dentists. I am a founding member. Go to www.adcpa.org. Interview, which is a wonderful device that helps find internal mobility issues below the gum line in teeth and other restorations. Go to www.interview.AI. And PPO Advisors is a new sponsor of our podcast. Go to www.ppoadvisors.com and you will meet their founder and owner today, Shelley DeGroff, who is going to give you some incredible information about how to increase your top line. So with that, I want to come to Shelley. Shelley's company, again, is called PPO Advisors. They've worked with close to 3,000 dental practices. They have increased revenues of those dental practices, and they track that very closely, by over $37 million. And their average clients' PPO reimbursements from insurance companies increased by 20%. So, Shelley, if I had a PPO you're telling me that I was contracted with and I'm getting $500,000 on PPO, you might be able to increase my top line by 100 grand?
Absolutely. There's so many ways that you can increase those revenues through your PPO contracts. It's just really understanding how they work and how to have them work for you, which is very complicated.
Well, we're gonna spend the next hour talking about that and unpacking that for everybody, because again, the two biggest challenges that you have as a dental practice owner are, number one, the PPO reimbursements from being in network with insurance plans. Number two is finding and maintaining team members, which we're not going to be talking about today, but we have talked about. And I hit on that a lot in our podcast that published twice every 2 weeks. So let's start off, Shelley. Something interesting I found out about you is, so you run this company, PPO Advisors, but your husband and his team have a very different type of a business that you run there where you live in rural Nebraska. It's a cattle ranch and a farm and chickens. And tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, well, if you're from Nebraska, there's not a lot of other things you can do. You're either in dental or you're in agriculture. So we split that right down the middle, and I take care of the dental side of things. And my husband, he is a cattle rancher. We have a cow-calf operation. So we are, producing beef for America, but then also Costco moved into the state of Nebraska about 5-6 years ago and wanted to grow their own chickens specifically for their company. Instead of going to market and buying, where Tyson buys or where everybody else buys, they want their own birds. And so we are a contract grower for Costco. And so the meat or the chickens that you buy, if you walk into the back of the Costco store and get a rotisserie, that may have very well been from one of our farms.
That's right. And you said that your family was into rodeo and all that kind of
Yes.
stuff?
Yeah. So we have 4 kids, and our kids are very active rodeo competitors. So they high school rodeo for the state of Nebraska, and then also compete at higher levels as well and travel all over and follow their dreams. So rodeo
Well,
is a big part of our history here.
well, I will tell you, one of my dearest friends in the whole world who passed away about 5 years ago, a long-term client, Dr. Ross Christ, he was actually a professor at the University of Nebraska for a while as he was getting his credentials to go to orthodontic school.
Yeah.
And he brought me to 2 University of Nebraska games. Number one, I have never eaten so well as I did at the tailgate. I mean, I've never seen burgers that big, steaks that big, chicken breast it was crazy. And so you guys certainly know how to eat
Yes.
and how That's wonderful. And some of the just most wonderful humans I ever met are in the heartland there in Nebraska. So that's fun. But we didn't come here to talk about chickens or beef, although that is very important. We came here to talk about how PPOs work. So I want to start off, talk a little bit about your professional journey and how you got to have a company and where you kind of came from, and then we'll get into the subject.
Absolutely. So I'm a graduate of the University of Nebraska, but I have an agricultural degree. My degree was in education, leadership, and communications. I intended to be an FFA teacher, but then career changes and I met my husband, and where we were at in rural Nebraska, there really was not anything that I could have jumped into right away. So I took a job at a dental office as a receptionist and fell in love with dental, got certified in expanded functions assisting, worked as an assistant for many years, and then transitioned to office management where insurance kind of became my passion. And it became a passion because it was such a confusing challenge. And I love a challenge. And so as I was looking through EOBs and contracts and fee schedules, it appeared as though there was no rhyme or reason as to how we were getting paid in this practice. And so the desire to understand the ins and outs of how insurance is working for us and against us is what spurred the whole life cycle of PPO advisors. And here we are full circle today. This is what I now do solely. So this is where the passion has driven. And now we have a great team of other people, fellow employees here at PPO Advisors doing exactly what I started out doing, which was navigating insurance contracts and understanding how it can, affect your bottom line and how we can really help you improve reimbursements through insurance.
Well, I'll tell you what, the first time I met you was, I believe, at our ADCPA meeting in Miami, I think it was, where you
Yeah.
presented. And again, I just learned so much and I have great respect for what you do. So let's get into this information here. We know that dental insurance companies are doing everything they can to make it more difficult for dentists to be profitable. And I have no
Yeah.
trepidation about saying that because that's what we see. I've seen it for 40 years. So I understand that they do this thing called data mining.
Yep.
And I read a little bit about it and it kind of like raised my eyebrows. What is data mining? How do insurance companies do it? And why is it important for dentists to know that they do this?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, data mining is nothing new. It's been going on since really the beginning of having contracts going through a system or claims going through a system. So, what data mining really is it is understanding what a dental practice is submitting on a daily basis, understanding those numbers, their profitability, their fees, all of that, so that they can, in a second, understand a shift that may be going on in the practice. If your fees change, if the type of dentistry you're doing is shifting, a lot of audits are generated because of the data mining, right? So if all of a sudden you're doing way more crowns than you've ever done, in the past, they may raise a red flag and question, why have you gone from doing composites to just all crowns? So data mining is really a way for the insurance companies to kind of checks and balance to make sure that things are aligning the way they anticipate they're going to, and so that they can understand the fees in a particular demographic as well. So they know what every provider's fees are being submitted through claims. And when you talk about setting master fees or, understanding what your fees should be in a zip code, that's typically all done through the data mining of insurance companies, seeing what all providers are submitting through demographics based off of the claim information.
So, Shelley, if a doctor starts taking courses at Pankey or through John
Mhm.
Coyce and they become a better clinical dentist and they're doing more comprehensive treatment plans, you're saying that these insurance companies are going to say, oh, no, 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 that's may not be good. And we're going to audit you. That's one thing that could happen, right?
It could happen. Again, it's not a guarantee that they're going to, but it certainly is going to help them understand the type of dentistry that your practice is evolving into. So, it's not necessarily going to be an immediate audit or a definite audit, but it's going to help them understand exactly what your practice does. so that they can see inconsistencies and billing fraud issues and things to that extent.
Is there anything that our listeners can do about this? Or it is what it is, and they're going to data mine you no matter what?
Yeah, there's no stopping it. It's their data, So if you're
Okay.
submitting to the insurance companies, they have a right to mine that data. So there is no stopping it, but always making sure that you're doing things, you're billing what you do. You're not adding different things onto claims, being hyper aware of the claims and the codes that you are putting together represent the service you've done. And really, that's the key to protecting yourself is doing exactly what you say you've done and making sure that your system reflects that.
Okay. So now let's get into the next conversation, which is fees. So I
Mm.
know for a fact that, every time that a dental office does not ask for fees after a year or two or three, the insurance company calls the office and says, "Hey, Dr. Shelley, we've seen that you haven't asked for a fee increase from us for 3 years. Why not? And let's increase your fee." That happens all the time, right, Shelley? That was
Oh, all the
sarcasm, by the way.
time.
That
Right.
was
Yes.
sarcasm. That was it, folks. That was sarcasm. Please don't turn off the podcast. Don't think that I've become an idiot or my brain has gone awry. So, talk about asking for fee increases. So, let's say a doctor is not working with your company or company like yours, okay?
Mhm.
And they just say, "Well, gee, we haven't had an increase from XYZ insurance company in 5 years on a 2740 crown." What should they do?
Right. So it's very common to go years, 10 years, 12 years before people practices see an increase if they're not actively pursuing the increases on their own. The insurance companies are not going to reach out to you and say, "It's been a while, we owe you more money." That is not going to happen. So that starting point is really understanding where your fees fall with particular insurance companies and how they compare to your master fees. You need to understand what the relationship between your master fees and the PPO fees you're accepting in your practice and what that really is doing to your practice. How many patients you have tied to each network, your top codes with those networks so that you have something solid to go off of to work through your negotiation with that insurance company. You don't want to ask for a fee increase on codes that are irrelevant to your practice. You want to ask for a fee increase on codes that are driving the production in your practice. In most general practices, that's really 10 codes. 10 codes generally bring in 90% of the revenue. So it's really
Yep.
important that you know what those codes are and you know what you need to ask for. You need to know also how you're contracted. In art, that's the biggest thing we get is, well, we thought we were contracted with
Oh,
XYZ directly, but it turns out we're not. So we're not even getting paid on the fee schedule we thought we were getting paid on. And that's really where it starts to fall apart.
you're going to be all over that and explaining how that works here in a minute. I promise. I promise. But the single doctor, I mean, if Dr. Wiederman calls up XYZ, I'm on their PPO plan, and I say, I haven't had a fee increase in 5 years. Are they all the time going to say no? Or there sometimes they're going to give me a fee increase? What?
Absolutely. And I don't want to discourage anyone from asking for a fee increase. So, we should all be proactive in asking, whether it's you're doing it on your own or you're searching for a company to help you with it. You should be actively searching for fee increases. And yeah, you may call and get a representative that can get you in touch with the department that's going to help you with a fee increase, but it's not always going to be a simple process, right? So their tactics are kind of to defer to say they will do something and then it never happens kind of scenarios. And so it's a time process that
Right.
no dental practice typically has the time to stick with. But the other thing I want to say here is if you are asking for fee increases, don't accept the first one they give you because there's so many different fee schedules available for a practice. It's really knowing what's available to you to make sure that you're getting the best advantage for your practice. So there's so much more that goes into it than just asking for that fee increase.
We need about 4 hours to discuss that, I'm sure. Here's an interesting one. And I actually learned this from 10-minute little recording that you did that I found on Instagram. And it has to do with, okay, so I'm in practice. Dr. Wiederman gives his son, Nathan, a discount. All right, well, let's not use son because we're not going to give discount. We're probably going to do that for free, but gives his friend, Shelley, a discount of $100 on a crown. Okay. And my friend Shelley is contracted with XYZ Insurance. Talk about the issues that the doctor has when he or she files that insurance claim with the $100 discount. That's a big deal, right? I hate to say this, that could land you in jail
So
if
it
you
is
do
a
it
big
wrong.
deal. It is. It is a big deal. And this is a big topic. I have a lot of blogs on this topic that people can search up on our website. And nobody wants to hear this either. Nobody wants to hear that they're being dictated by an insurance company how they can give discounts. It's their business, right? They feel as though no one should get a say in that. If a doctor wants to give somebody a discount, why can't we give them a discount? Well, unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. So whether you're in network with insurance or out of network with insurance, and this is what gets everyone, is they feel as though this only applies if you're an in-network provider, and that is not true. So if you accept insurance in the manner of we file for patients, even though we're out of network, you're still accepting insurance in your practice. So if you're giving PPO patients a discount on this service that is being rendered, and you discount the patient portion only, so you give Shelley a $100 discount on her crown, but you bill XYZ Insurance the full $1,500 for the service, you have overbilled the insurance company, and that is considered a misrepresentation of fees and fraudulent. Now, is that going to end you up in jail? No, most likely that's not. It's just going to be, if they catch that in an audit, a slap on the hand and, hey, we can't do that. And, we may take that $100 out of your next patient. But what is fraudulent enough to land you into prison is a situation where you're doing Medicare or Medicaid fraud, where you see a retiree, right? So your best friend that you golf with, and he comes into the practice and he has Humana Medicare insurance, and you say, hey, don't worry about it. I'm going to bill your insurance and write off the difference. You've overbilled the insurance company, and that is a government funded insurance program, even though it's through a PPO. So that's where those RAC audits come into play and catch a lot of practices. And then they have the ability to dig a little deeper and start to find other inconsistencies and frauds in a practice. So it's just never good to give a discount incorrectly. We just want to do it right from the get-go.
Well, and you mentioned about they might give you a slap in the hand or ask for the $100 back. Well, they might not only ask for the $100 back, but they might ask for the $100 back times 500 patients that you've done this on
Correct.
over the last 2 years. And then we're talking about money. And, neither you nor I, to the best of my knowledge, are licensed attorneys, but there's probably not a whole lot we can do about that. So I
No.
want to get into the next topic, which is called NPI credentialing fraud. And I run into this as a broker. So I sell a dental practice to Dr. Shelley. And Dr. Shelley, my dental practice was contracted with XYZ Insurance Company. Okay. So now Dr. Shelley wants to continue to be contracted with XYZ Insurance. But on the day of the sale, we haven't told the team, so we can't go in and we can't go start the credentialing because the team might find out and they might call the office. So on day one, we start credentialing. So Dr. Shelley says, hey, Art, is it okay until I get credentialed that I use your NPI number and I file under your name and your number? And, we run into that with the sale of a practice. We run into that with someone starting a practice from scratch who opens the doors on August 1st, 2026, right? And then they're not credentialed with anybody because they haven't finished it because it's complicated, or an associate. This is a big topic. Talk about that.
NPI fraud is its own beast. And this is another topic that nobody really wants to hear,
Nope,
but it needs to
they
be
don't.
talked about. And there's a lot of debate on Facebook forums and, all other types of dental forums out there on what's the right answer and what's the wrong answer here. I'm of the old school following, and I don't know, right or wrong. At the end of the day, you've got to know that what you're doing, if you are committing an NPI type of fraud, that you have to be so confident that you're doing it right or wrong that you're not worried about the repercussions. Because NPI, your NPI 1 identifies you as the provider of service. You're saying, I'm the provider who rendered the service. I was the one who did the work. I am the provider. When you falsely use someone else's NPI, it is identity fraud. You're saying that somebody else did that service, but you were that somebody else. And therefore, if there's a problem, if there's malpractice, if there's any sort of issue, you now have another person involved that may not know they're involved because you fraudulently use their NPI, or they gave you permission to use their NPI. But will that hold up in court if you guys are sued for that type of malpractice that has occurred or something else? So NPI fraud, again, nobody wants to hear this. And I hear this all the time too, Art, as, well, I just, talked to 3 of my classmates and they all acquired a practice over the last 5 years and they all did insurance fraud and none of them got caught. I hear that so often. And you know what? That's fine. That's a risk that you have to be willing to take, but are you willing to take it if you're the one that does get caught? And with what's going on in our economy, with the administrations, I'm sure everyone is aware that fraud and discount fraud and government fraud is all on the chopping block, right?
Sure.
They're trying to eliminate fraud. And so we get back into those scenarios with NPI fraud, going back to, okay, well, we're pretending to be the selling provider to get these claims paid as in-network, but we're seeing government patients. We're seeing Medicare patients. Even though it's disguised as a PPO plan through a PPO contract, it's still a government plan. So those are going to go through a different audit. And that, again, increases those risks of getting caught and being audited. And then that becomes a federal situation. So again, the debate is hot. Everyone's got their own theory. Everyone's got their own success story of doing it fraudulently. And then, we come in and we're like, okay, well, we are the sounding of, we get it, right? We get that you may not get caught, but we also have worked with many practices that have. And so how do you want to fall into that? And do you want to start off on the wrong foot?
The ramifications, if you get caught, are number one, the insurance company is going to ask you to write a big check back to them.
Correct.
Right?
Absolutely.
And
Yep.
if the insurance company decides that they would like to make an example out of someone, and that someone happens to be you, doctor,
Mm-hmm.
they could file charges, right? I mean, again, neither
Absolutely.
you nor I are a licensed attorney, but have you seen that happen?
We have. So we have worked, especially in a case in California, we've worked with some NPI fraud. And this will tie into, I don't want to say insurance company names, but I think everyone will be able to put it together. But it'll tie into scenarios where you're utilizing a provider's NPI to file claims so you can get a higher reimbursement
Yep.
than what you as a new dentist can get. And we've been involved in cases with that where it gets caught in an audit and they're scrambling, trying to figure out, lawyers are reaching out, asking us, well, what does the contract say? What can we do? How can we help? And you're SOL at that point.
Yep. So that's something you'd be aware
Yep.
of. Okay, I want to take a minute and let you talk a little bit about what you do at PPO Advisors. But doctors, please hang on, because I think one of the biggest topics that we are going to talk about next, Shelley, is going to be these trains. I call them trains, not because I'm a big fan of the TV show The Big Bang Theory and Sheldon Cooper likes trains, but because of how if you contract with ABC Insurance Company without reading the fine print, you could be contracted with 10 others. We're going to get to that because that's a big deal in a second. But I want you for a second, Shelley, to talk a little bit about the services you provide at PPO Advisors, what you do, and then how people can get a hold of you if they're interested in engaging and having you take a look at what they're doing on the PPO front.
Absolutely. So at PPO Advisors, our passion is really on the credentialing, the negotiating of fees, and the analyzing of what a practice is doing with insurance and how to help them better their insurance situation. We work with startups, acquisitions, and established practices. So really any phase of life that you're in with your practice, we can be of assistance. So one of the big things we do is we analyze insurance productivity for an established practice. And in that analysis, we're able to really understand how each network is impacting the practice. And then we do our negotiations during our analysis. We're reaching out to those networks. We're finding increased fee schedules, and then showing the practice the pros and the cons of making any changes and what those increased fees could look like moving forward. But is it worth it to make that change? Because there's no way, there's always going to be something you have to think about to get to an increase, right? They're not just going to hand out increases without something you may have to give up. So we want to make sure that there's a lot of transparency. We are big on education at our company. We want you guys to understand insurance, that this is a game. It was built by design, right? So this insurance complexity is really by design. It is not supposed to be something everybody understands because it's gotten too big and too complex, which is why companies like us exist, so that we can live in this little arena and understand it for you, and then help educate the office managers and the practice owners as to what are the best things they can be doing if they want to be involved with insurance. And then another service that we provide, we don't want people to be reliant on insurance. We want you to have a well-rounded practice. And if insurance is a part of your practice, that's great. But we also want to help you recognize what being an out-of-network provider would look like in your practice.
Yes.
There needs to be a very healthy balance of in and out of network, and we will help analyze that process as well. So we're not just pro insurance here, we're pro practices winning and understanding, and whether that's staying in network or going out of network, that's what we're all about. So we're happy to be with every phase of it.
So Shelley, if someone was interested, please give out your contact information. It will be in the show notes, folks, in case you're driving or you can't write it down. But how do they get a hold of you?
So the best way to get a hold of us is through our information email, which is info@ppoadvisors.com. And then if you specifically have a question about anything on this podcast, you can reach me directly. And I'm Shelley with an EY, so SHELLEY at PPOadvisors.com. Also, go to our website, PPOadvisors.com. You can click on our phone number. You can call us. We always have somebody answering the phone that can get you in touch with a team member that can answer any questions as well. But then utilize the resources on our website. I try to write blogs all the time about the changes that are happening, things that you need to be aware of, and just kind of help simplify the information that's out there. So I don't gatekeep. I want to share all the knowledge I gain from dealing with the insurance companies, and I try to put it out there on our blogs. So we have a wealth of information on our website as well.
I know you had mentioned, as us being our new sponsor, that they might be able to get a little discount on an analysis you do. Maybe talk about that, and then we'll move on to the other topics.
Absolutely. So we do, for an established practice, we do a risk-free analysis. We call it risk-free because we do charge a $1,000 deposit for the analysis. But if we cannot increase their PPO revenues by $10,000 or more, we refund them the $1,000 deposit back. So if anybody mentions this podcast when they reach out, whether it's email or phone call, and they say, hey, we learned about your product or your service through, Art's podcast, then mention that and we will discount their analysis for $250. And then that also applies. We'll take $250 off a startup fee or an acquisition fee. We don't do an analysis because there's nothing to analyze. There's no productivity to analyze on a new practice, but we would take $250 off their fee for utilizing the podcast information.
Hey, it's Art Wiederman here. I don't recommend products lightly. I only share solutions that can genuinely impact your practice's clinical outcomes and bottom line. That's why I really want to tell you about Interview. They've developed an FDA-cleared technology that measures internal tooth mobility, something that traditional methods just can't detect early enough. Here's what that means for your practice. You can identify cracks and loose restorations before they become emergencies. That means better treatment planning, fewer surprises for your patients, and more predictable case acceptance. Interview integrates right into your existing workflow. No complicated processes, just clever diagnostic information when you need it. it. If you've been looking for a way to elevate your diagnostic capabilities and strengthen patient trust, book a demo at interview.ai. That's INNERVIEW.ai. Mention my name and you'll get $250 off. That's Interview AI. INNERVIEW.ai. All right, let's get back into some more stuff. Let's talk about these trains because doctors, you may or may not know, I hope you do, that when you sign up with XYZ Insurance Company, you may be signing up with ABC, DEF, GHI, JKL. I have to go through the alphabet. I think I remember the alphabet. Shelley, talk about how this works. I know you just put an article on your blog about one of the insurance companies that have created a new relationship as of August 1st. Talk about how does this whole thing work? In other words, if I contract with XYZ, I'm probably contracted with some others.
Absolutely. And that's really a great takeaway. So, back in the 90s, early 2000s, you contracted with a network and you had that network. But it's not like that anymore. So almost every insurance is shared. So when you look at insurance now, insurance participation, you need to know that it's a giant web, that there are backdoor arrangements, agreements with other companies within those contracts with almost every single network. Very few don't have a shared agreement. So you call them trains, which is very accurate. I typically in my blogs and talking to clients will call them shared networks or TPAs. And there is a difference between the two. So a TPA is your third party agreement. That's going to be companies like Connection Dental, Denimax, Zealous, where they are large umbrella companies that you get one fee schedule and then multiple payers are a part of that agreement. So you are signing one contract, but knowingly accepting all of the payers that are a part of that contract, and you agree on one fee schedule for all the payers. Okay, that's a TPA. Now, a shared network is, say you go with XYZ company, and that is typically just a normal direct contract, right? You would plan on only being a part of that one company. Well, that company now has shared agreements to it, again, under the same fee schedule you agree to with the direct company, but they have the ability to share out and go elsewhere. So another thing I'm going to bring into this, which is going to kind of make your brain hurt, is all of these networks, all of these contracts have the ability to utilize the most favored nations clause. Okay.
I wanted to talk about that. Yeah.
The most
And
favored
this has
nations
nothing to
clause.
do with countries negotiating with each other, but go ahead.
Nothing. Correct. And I'm a huge history buff. So I thought the same thing when I learned this. I'm like, well, this is odd. But no, it still applies. So the most favored nations clause allows contracts that have shared agreements and arrangements to utilize the lowest fee schedule they can attach to.
Bring that up. Yeah. Oh,
So
that's
that
horrible.
means that if you are overly contracted in your practice, so that means you hold a direct contract with XYZ, ABC, and LMNOP, right? You have three different contracts, but all of those contracts have the same shared one company that they can also pick up. Then they're going to go to the lowest fee schedule for that network, even though you didn't agree to it originally. That's just part of the clause.
And I'm sure that when you call XYZ Insurance, Shelley, we're going to be doing sarcasm throughout the rest of this conversation. I'm sure when you call them, the person on the other end of the phone explains all of this to you in plain English, like you just explained to my audience, right?
Yep, it's exactly right. No, not at all. So, we talk to these office managers all the time and they say, but I called and they told me I'm not in network with XYZ. That's right, because you don't hold a direct contract, and that's who you called. You called them directly, and so they're going to tell you you're not in network because you are not in network directly with that company. You're indirectly in network with that company through XYZ. And so you're getting mixed information from the networks you're calling because they're only going to give you a very small piece of the puzzle.
And these PPO contracts, now I tried to read one once,
Mhm.
but then I ended up in the emergency room with an asthma attack. It was really horrible. I mean, aren't some of these contracts, how long are these contracts? Like dozens and dozens of pages long?
That's a great question. And a lot of providers will even tell you, we never even got the contract. We signed an application, but we didn't even get to see the contract.
Wow.
And so
That's
they're not easy to get a hold of. You have to request the contract. They'll take the application without you ever reading the contract. And then in addition to a contract, there's a processing manual that you need. And that's what breaks down all of these inconsistencies we run into. The code you can submit at the same time. You'll always hear about crowns and buildups not being covered on the same day. Each insurance company has their own processing manual that tells you how you are to bill certain codes within their network. They all differ from each other. So this ignorance is bliss, right? We don't know what we don't know, but they don't freely give you the information without requesting it either. And so it's this tug of war of, well, how are we supposed to know? Well, they make it difficult to know, but there are ways to find it out. It's just very difficult.
That's probably how you earn your keep with a new client. A lot of times a new client will come in and they're contracted with half the free world, which is going to get me into the biggest mistakes dentists make. And you look at this and you immediately say, oh, I can move this one to this one, this one to this one, and this one to this one, and increase fees immediately, right? Is that kind of how it works
That's
sometimes?
absolutely how that works. It's understanding how the puzzle goes back together in different angles and ways to maximize reimbursements. But there's caveats all throughout it. There's clauses in contracts that prevent you from making changes that may block you for 6 months for, making that change. You may go out of network. You may not go out of network. You may only pick up a portion of this network if you move it. So again, the transparency of what we do is so important so that you have the full picture of understanding how to get to that higher reimbursement and what that really truly looks like in your practice, because it's not black and white. It's all shades of gray.
And most of our listeners have a good deal, maybe well over 50% of their patients are in network with insurance companies. With that in mind, let's talk about what are some of the biggest mistakes that dentists make in dealing with insurance companies and going in network with PPOs. I know we talked about one of them just now, but tell us some of
Yeah.
the biggest mistakes you see.
Probably the one that sits and resonates the most with me, and I think most of your listeners is going to be your startup and your acquisition clients, where they just want to get a network so fast. They're worried about that out of network process. And so they just go and network as quickly as they can. They'll either inherit what the seller had, or they just sign up blindly, not knowing what they're getting into. And unfortunately, that's exactly what the insurance companies want you to do. They want you to feel rushed and to feel like you have to be a network as soon as you start, owning your business. And unfortunately, now there's so many clauses in these contracts that it makes it really hard to get out of them, and or for you to negotiate them and get into increased fees. And so not knowing what you're doing long term with these contracts is probably the biggest mistake we see. It's the one that's going to cost you the most money. So I do really want to stress, being an out of network provider through an acquisition, whether you're startup, it is okay to see patients as out of network. Most PPO plans have out of network benefits. They're still going to get an insurance reimbursement of some sort, and you can still legally give PPO discounts while you're out of network. It's really changing that mind thought, because I think so often providers are told, you have to be in network. It's not worth risking being out of network. We understand that, acquisitions are typically closed, so they're not talked about until the day of signing, right? Until the new owner has taken possession. And we understand the reasoning behind that, but that doesn't mean that we get to forfeit profitability long term by taking the time and signing up with the right insurances to ensure long-term success with these contracts.
Okay, so let's now move into the startup doctor.
Yeah.
Doctor has signed a lease on Elm Street, and doctor is going to go ahead and get going on all of that, right? and doctor is going to sign up with a bunch of, you get that doctor, hopefully, before he or she does anything. What's the strategy for a startup practice because they have no patience. They need to get revenues, they need to pay bills. I've done these analysis for years. Doctors probably need about $200,000 to $300,000 a year in revenue to break even in the first year, with rent and their loan payment and their maybe one employee. But they need the revenues and they have no patience. They're going to hire a marketing company, of course, but they're going to sign up for PPOs. What is the strategy for a startup doctor and from a 35,000-foot view?
So a startup doctor definitely needs to strategically be looking at the demographic. Where are the majority of insurance patients coming from? And then once we understand that demographic, which we can help with, then we look at negotiating how can you join that PPO. Most of these insurances have multiple ways for a provider to join. There's more than one avenue. There's more than one fee schedule available. So, for instance, insurance company XYZ, you can participate with it 6 different ways. You can indirectly participate with it 5 ways, or you can directly participate with that company. And that means there are 6 different fee schedules we can continually negotiate to get them the best reimbursement and decide then the longest success rate with that contract so that they have long-term success. So they can start this process as soon as they have a physical address, a Google phone number that they can then change at any time, so whatever they need to, just get a Google number is what we always say, and their dental license. And then we can start this process of negotiating long before they start seeing patients so that they can be a network upon opening their doors. That's the best strategy. And then realizing you don't need to sign up with everything, because if you're going to sign up with an insurance company and the write-off is 45 or 50%, you are better off seeing fewer patients for more money than burning through your equipment and your products when you're not getting paid adequately for that. And it's really looking at it from a different perspective. I know we want the chairs to be full, we do. But there comes a point where you have to weigh the difference between seeing a PPO patient for very little money versus having a fee-for-service patient in the chair.
One of the things that we mentioned earlier is going out of network with PPOs, okay? And I've seen this happen with PPOs where what happens is you go out of network with a PPO. And that PPO gets the call from you. They give you, your 30. Give your 30-day notice if that's what's allowed, and then they send a letter to your patients, and they say, "Hey, Shelley, Dr. Wiederman, we got notification is going out of network with XYZ, our insurance company, but we want to let you know that there are 5 wonderful dentists within a 2-mile radius of your home that provide outstanding service that we would strongly urge you so that you can use your insurance benefits." They're kind of saying, well, if you go, if they go out of network, patient Shelley, you can't really go to them anymore. And that's certainly not true. Let's have a conversation about how do we go out of network? What's the best way to do it? And I'll chime in because I got a lot of opinions about that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Going out of network, it's a strategy. It's not something you just, tomorrow I'm going out of network and I'm going to call the networks and we're going to term them all, right? It's a strategy. So we do want to make sure that it's a positive change that we're making in the practice, that, obviously as your CPA, hopefully they understand the financials to the extent that we can talk about lowering the amount of patients that could be coming in and what that would look like, right? From there, then, once we start terming, it's conversations. It's conversations with patients. It's letters that will be sent out before you even do this. And it's a strategic way of preparing your patients that you want to retain, knowing that you're not going to retain everyone. And that's the first step, is having that mindset that we can't retain everyone. There are PPO only patients, right? There are people that will only go to a PPO provider. They don't care who that provider is. But then there's relationship patients that are truly going to who they feel the most comfortable with, who that they know, they want to continue this lasting relationship they've built with the provider. These are the patients that you can have really impactful conversations about how their environment with dentistry is going to change because they're no longer an in-network practice, that they can now spend more time with them, that they can, do more types of services that are not dictated by insurance only. So it's very strategic conversation and relationship building that goes into the process of moving out of network. But really, mindset is the first thing, and it's making sure you're in the right mindset to make that change.
So what I've seen, Shelley, is we've done about 250 podcasts in the last 7.5 years. And I've reviewed some of my best friends are dental consultants, and some of them have made a specialty out of helping doctors we call it changing your relationship with insurance. Okay.
Yep.
It may mean going out of network. It may mean going to Shelley and changing your relationship by getting them to pay you a better fee. I mean, there's all
Right.
these things. The one thing, doctors, I want you to understand is that if your patients don't fully trust you, if they don't trust your practice, if they don't say, Dr. Shelley, I will go to the moon for her. I mean, whatever she says, I'm going to do. If you don't have that, if you have more of what we call a transactional practice as opposed to a relationship practice, then doctors going out of network could be an absolute disaster. Whereas, I've given lectures on this, Shelley, and I use some verbal skills from some of my favorite humans on the planet who do this all the time. And the first thing we tell the patients is, Dr. Shelley, the first thing you need to know is that we've made the decision because of the fact that we can't make this practice safe for you. We can't use the best supplies and the best labs and have the best team around you to give you the best care. But the first thing you need to know, Shelley, is even though we are changing our relationship with XYZ, you can still come and have your dentistry done here. And the fact of the matter is, and then they can educate them about how, because with dental reimbursements, at a maximum of $1,000 or $1,500 or $2,000, which is the way they were back in the 1950s when the California Dental Association first set up their first plan. Those are the maximums. So, that was when a crown was $100 and a prophy was $9. Now a crown is
Right.
$1,500 and a prophy is $150. And what are the maximums, Shelley?
Right there. They're the
Yeah.
same.
So, yeah.
1,500.
Yeah, so it's insane. So you've got to let the patient. So any more insight on that particular issue as far as what you do as part of your services to help them go out of network?
Yeah. We like to bring the clear financial picture to it based off of their productivity they've had with those insurances historically, right? So if you're thinking about dropping XYZ, we're going to analyze the last 12 to 24 months of production that you've submitted to XYZ. And then we're going to look at a calculator to be able to say, okay, if you think you're going to lose 50% of your patients, this is what it's going to look like financially. Can you sustain that? What changes are you making in your practice as well? Are you wanting to drop insurances because you're cutting down from 5 days to 4 days? Are you bringing in an associate and now you shouldn't be cutting hours, or you shouldn't be cutting insurances, not hours? So, again, there's so many things that are going to play into the outcome of this, but I couldn't agree with you more that this is a relationship with insurance and your patient that is changing. And if you are a transactional practice only, this can be a very scary process of terming out of insurances. But from our standpoint, we agree if you have built a practice upon relationship and trust with your patients, then this is very doable. But we need to have a plan, an action plan, and we need to have an understanding of the numbers. And so we have a special analysis that we do for practices that are just wanting to get out of insurance. We hope that they share those reports with, CPAs like you, that they can then take that a step further and look at, okay, you own your building in the next 5 years. This is going to what it's going to look like in the future from here as well. So there's so much that goes into it, but what a freeing movement.
And I know you work with CPAs all the time, right?
We do. We love working with CPAs. I think they're the best resource that ties directly into us because there's nothing more. We're bottom line, you're bottom top line. It's all the same.
And you've worked with some of our Academy of Dental CPA members, I'm pretty sure, right?
Absolutely, we do. Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
those guys are just the best of the best.
They are. Yes.
We've had conversations about that. So, Shelley, we're about to put a bow on this. Is there anything else that we need to let our audience know about dealing with PPO plans, and maybe a final bit of advice like, okay, if you want to get started, the mindset is like, it's scary. It's
It is
scary to
scary.
change your relationship. But
Yep.
in your experience, I know in my experience, I've had doctors who've gone out of network with insurance, and I get the same phone call. I have never had anybody who has said, Art, this is a total disaster. My practice is zero and I have to file bankruptcy. I've never had anything like that. What I normally get is, oh my God, this is amazing. And by the way, we did lose some patients, like you said.
Yep.
And guess what, Art? They're starting to come back to our practice, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so we see that too. So some last thoughts, Shelley, about what doctors should be thinking about, anything we missed in the conversation. I think we hit all the major food groups, didn't we?
Whew, we covered a lot, but
Yeah.
we skimmed the surface. So, certainly I
no.
want people to definitely dig a little deeper and ask more questions, if they get the opportunity to. But I would say my final thoughts is don't let the fear of insurance run your practice, because that's the immediate red flag. If you have worked so hard to get through college, dental school, business ownership, and you're letting insurance completely run your practice, meaning all your treatment plans are dictated by insurance companies, everything is dictated by insurance, and you don't have that ownership of your practice the way you want it to be anymore, that is the first red flag that you're in pretty deep and you should be reevaluating how insurance can impact and can change. And so I think a lot of people are held by fear, but it costs you more money to be afraid of what the answers are than just seeking some support and finding the right people in this area of insurance to help you guys see what changes can really be profitable and what your future could really look like. So don't let fear control it.
I love that. That's great. All right. So one more time, would you please give out your contact information, doctors? Again, I say this over and over again. A podcast is not a CE course. It is a call to action. Doctors, if
Absolutely.
you are not as profitable as you can be, it's not because you're paying too much for gloves. It's because you're giving away 40% of your revenues on 50% of your patients, and the business model doesn't work. I'm sorry. If people from insurance companies are listening, it's a math problem. It's a CPA problem. It's a financial problem. So if we can increase the top line, and this is the biggest thing, there's no overhead. So if Shelley, if you're seeing, $500,000 of revenues that come in from PPOs and she can increase that by 20%, that's $120,000 in your pocket, doctor, in your pocket with no overhead. So Shelley, with that said, would you please give out your contact information? And again, if you'd made a special offer to our audience, give that out and then we'll put a bow on this.
Perfect. So yes, please reach out to PPOadvisors.com. That is our website. Again, you'll find all of our blog information. Please read through those blogs. So much good information in there. We try to stay abreast of all of the network changes Art had mentioned. There's a new change with a particular insurance company coming out on August 1st that you want to be aware of. So be proactive. Look at those blogs. You can also reach us at info@PPO Advisors, or you can give us a call, and our direct line is 913-359-7800. And anyone from our team will be happy to help you just answer questions or get you going with one of the services that we provide.
And again, there's a $250
There is,
offer.
sorry, yes.
That's okay. That's why I'm here.
Yep. And yes, we are so excited to be partnering with this podcast. We love what you're doing. We love helping providers understand things a little bit more and seeing the good work that you guys do. We're excited to offer $250 off any service. So again, that could go towards an established practice. The deposit, we would take $250 off of that, or a startup or acquisition fee, which is a flat rate fee. Again, on our website, all of those details are there, but mention this podcast and we will give you $250 off.
And by being a sponsor, you also have to give me a really nice steak, right? Is that how that works?
We will send you some great Omaha steaks.
Well,
Yes.
oh my God. I'm so glad I picked you as a sponsor. And by the way, doctors, I'm very, very careful of who I affiliate with in my podcasts. And many of you know me for a long, long time. And I just love the way Shelley and her team do what they do. And I'm excited to have you as part of our podcast. So thank you. So would you hang with me, Shelley, as I go ahead and take the podcast out? Doctors, again, thank you for your time. Please tell your friends. Please follow us on Facebook and Instagram, on YouTube, on TikTok, and subscribe to the podcast so that every other Wednesday when we publish, you are going to get your copy of the podcast right to your phone or your mobile device. Thanks to our sponsors, the Academy of Dental CPAs. This is the official podcast of the Academy of Dental CPAs, www.adcpa.org. Again, our new sponsor, Shelley's company, PPO Advisors, www.ppoadvisors.com. Go check out what they've got going on. Great stuff on her blog, by the way. And interview, www.innerview.ai, which helps find internal mobility issues in teeth below the gum line that traditional x-rays don't find. And with that, that is this edition of the Art of Dental Finance and Management podcast with Art Wiederman, CPA. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Shelley, for the great information. And we will see you next time. Bye-bye.